Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
All right, hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Friday, February 11th, 2022. Time for another show, and for whatever reason, my mouse is not working. And I was like, all of a sudden, getting ready for the show, and trying to lower the volume on things and fade them in and out so there wasn't such an abrupt jump between the various bits of music that we use to bring the show alive in the morning. And mouse just, not really responding. And now dead. So we'll see if we can plug it in. It's one of those Apple Magic Mouses. And it was moving around. It was moving the cursor around. It just wasn't allowing me to control anything on the soundboard. Then I remembered, you have some keyboard controls that you can use to make things work. I don't know whether I can raise and lower the volume on things or not. But at any rate, you can use some of the keypads at least to play the different things. So I can figure out what key you have to hit in order to get the various sound effects. So maybe later if we need sad trombone or dramatic music, we won't be entirely out of luck. That might be nice. But yeah, it threw a little monkey wrench into things this morning. And we'll live. And besides which, the music isn't absolutely necessary to get things rolling. So, okay. Let's see. I was trying to put something aside for later reading that I spotted from Empty Wheel earlier, and I'm just going to have to search that up differently. And you know how things go on a Friday morning. I didn't mean to be working this hard already. All right, let's see if I can't find what I was looking for from Marcy. I was just tracking something down, I think, about the there we are. The various bits and pieces of classified information that just, happened to turn out to have been stored at Mar-a-Lago for some, no particular reason. And let's see, what was she chasing down here? I'm just curious about this. I think this is a follow-up, I guess, to... or a companion piece. There's not much in the way of follow-up that I can see here. We'll trace it down the rabbit hole. But somebody asking about, what about that bit of federal law that appeared, at any rate, to offer the possibility that Trump could be disqualified from future office holding if he were in violation of a certain provision of the Presidential Records Act. And I'm looking at the tweet from CNN Justice and Courts reporter Caitlin Polance. The criminal law that might be in play here, according to nearly everyone that Laura Jarrett and I talked to, is 18 U.S. Code 2071, prohibiting removing federal documents. It has this: if convicted, the person, we remember this, right, shall forfeit the ability to hold federal office. And she's got a companion piece that's tweeted along here. I noticed it because I saw Marcy's little icon go by saying, want proof that Trump knows about 18 U.S. Code 2071? And she provides a link here, although it takes us to the Office of the Inspector General's report, a review of various actions by the Federal Bureau of Investigation and Department of Justice in advance of the 2016 election. Now, it looks like a pretty dense report, so I don't know if I would necessarily take that as proof that Donald Trump knows anything about it. But the point is that I guess the proof is out there. And whether or not he chose to read it and digest it, I don't have any idea if we'll ever figure it out. All right. In the meantime, let's see if we can do anything about resetting the mouse, and we can read the CNN piece and see where they are on this stuff, and see if it leads us anywhere fruitful. But first, of course, I probably ought to take a pause to read what's on my morning agenda, thanks to Bill and his morning tweet. The Kagro in the Morning radio show is live now. Kagro X reminds you that if you're still making gazpacho police jokes, you are so 36 hours ago. Yeah, but I got to tell you, I'm not certain that that's over with. And there's more to that story, although I never did figure out exactly. There's certainly more things going on among weirdo Republicans that might make them want to adopt the gazpacho police framing than just the weird letter from Congressman Troy Nils the other day. But Troy Nils is back at it. I don't know when he sent this out, but I just noticed this morning. When did he send it? What's the date on this? Yesterday at 1 in the afternoon. And I guess he's disputing this whole thing about his door being wide open. The door to his office suite, as the police put it. And he has tweeted out this video of, I guess, himself opening the door to, well, sort of the door to his office and letting it swing closed. And he says, this is the exact door that Capitol Police claims their officer found, quote, wide open on that Saturday. The door automatically closes. See for yourself. How could this door be found wide open? And lots of theories circulating already on Twitter, like that doormat that's right there could have been in the way, either purposefully held open by a staffer who was on his way out just for a brief trip to around the corner to the bathroom or anything like that. Could have been any number of reasons. And people, speculating about the various hydraulic automatic door closing thingies that might, may or may not have been in play. I don't know, but it's hard to tell there's a little, plaque on the door there, which is actually in one of those spots on the door. And it's a very tight shot of the door. And to be honest, being somewhat familiar with Longworth House Office Building, where his offices are located, I can tell you that's almost assuredly not the front door to his office suite. Now, it's not entirely clear from the police letter. I looked back, and it just said the door to your office suite. That is a door to a part of his office suite. But the likelihood that it is the front door is almost zero. A guy like Nils almost assuredly does what 99% of the rest of members of Congress do: display flags, the United States flag, the flag of his state, and who knows whatever other flags they might want to display. Lots of people have all individual touches that they put on things, but they almost always have flags outside the main entrance to their office suite. There are none visible here, but it's a very tight shot of the door. And what you can see is, the only other extraneous things that you can see in this tight shot is that there's a couple of photographs. It looks like photos of faces, and I don't know whose faces they are, right up tight to the door. What is it? The door frame? The door, the outer decorative door frame there. So it's right up tight on there, which also indicates that it's not his front door. Usually that's about where you would A, see the flags, and B, see a nameplate identifying whose office it is. And they don't have these recessed doors as this one is. It's just, there's a lot that indicates that it's probably not the front door to his office. Though it is possible that the police did indicate in some other communication that this was the door that was open. It could be open. Typically, a door like this, I don't know, you probably didn't want to know all this about the Longworth House Office Building, but an office suite, as the name implies, is a series of interconnected rooms, and congressmen get an assignment to some group of rooms like that, and it changes from time to time. Things get reconfigured. There's lots of doors from the hallway lead into office suites. Almost all of them, except the front entrance doors, are locked and aren't used for ingress or egress by anyone, with the exception occasionally of some offices will do it. They'll leave that door open and they'll leave it accessible. A lot of places will block it with desks because they don't intend for it ever to be used as a manner of ingress and egress, but others will very frequently leave the one that leads directly to the member's office where they actually have their desk and, similar office furniture, couches and whatever. The inner office where the congressperson does their work. Sometimes the member will insist on leaving that door in the little corridor that often leads to it open so that he can get in and out without having to walk through the office suite, through the front door, and all the way through everyone's workspace, well, for various reasons. And that's what this one looks like. This door opens, and you can see it's a straight shot down the little corridor inside the office suite to what looks like his inner office. And anyway, I don't know. I guess they'd have to ask the cops whether that was the door or not. But I have a feeling that the police meant the front door to the office suite and not one of these side doors. Although that would be very suspicious if one of those was open as well. But I don't necessarily think it's beyond nails at this point. If they're trying to keep the Gazpacho police meme alive, they have to, fudge it a little bit. And so I found out that the door that I usually use to my office, whether he intends to obfuscate this way or is just dumb and like, this is the door I use. I never go through the front door of my office suite. So this must be the door they meant. And it doesn't stay open. So I don't know. I think we'll find out later on that maybe that wasn't the door and maybe he's full of it. But I'd love to find out why he's so adamant about keeping this in the news, given that the police investigation was, oh, yeah, that's nothing. Well, we'll forget all about that. And we won't bother saying anything about it. I mean, it happened in November, and he made inquiries about it in January, and by the end of January, the police said, yeah, there's nothing here. We got a satisfactory explanation. It's all cool. And then mid-February, he decides to make a big deal out of this, and now we're at Gazpacho Police. I don't know if it was a great play. That's all I got to say about that stupid thing, even though that took about 15, 20 minutes to get through. Let's see. We'll see if we can figure out what the rest of this is all about. Oh, look, I've got some notes on this one. Let's see, who's tweeting me about this one? Okay, Brian Pillion. Pillion, how do you pronounce your last name, Brian? P-I-L-L-I-O. It's like billion, but you turn the B upside down and backwards and turn it into pillion. How about that? And he says, what? You mean to say that Troy Nils, of all people, may be misrepresenting evidence? And sends me the tweet. Hey, the tweet of Brandy Buckman. Okay, well, let's take a look at what Brandy has to say here. Republican Troy Nils of Texas, once fired from the Richmond, Texas Police Department for reasons including destruction of evidence. Ooh, he's probably helping Donald Trump out with that one. And let's see. He was fired from the Richmond, Texas Police Department for reasons including destruction of evidence, has accused the U.S. Capitol Police of illegally snooping around his office, and she's covering the story both on Twitter and at Daily Kos. I don't know if this is an important enough story to distract myself for so long, but there's a lot of reaction to it. And I see here that Congressman Swalwell, Eric Swalwell, had something to say about it yesterday, too. You're still whining over this? I've been in my office late at night on a number of occasions when Capitol Police came in because they did a security check. Don't tell me you're for the police, then, ooh, he uses some strong language, then we'll say crap on the police. And by the way, you're not that important. No one is looking at you. I think that's a pretty good summation of the story. And I think that probably can and should be the end of it and maybe our discussion of it. Let's, although, the fact that Brandy has spent some time on it intrigues me too, and let's see what she has to say about it. She just 2 days ago was telling everybody that, this is a guy who got fired from the police department. So, I don't know, I guess the Daily Kos story is, 2 days old now and probably doesn't have any new information on his whining about it right now today. So we'll leave it for now, unless any of the rest of you have some suggestions about what we might do to update our knowledge of this story. I can switch over to what Caitlin Polentz was looking at over at CNN. I'm just curious to see, you remember the other day, I was a little skeptical about whether or not this section, what was it? Dang, I already closed the thing. 2071 actually applied because of the way the CRS report that I had access to was laid out and made it sound like that's for withholding evidence or removing evidence from a court or courthouse and destroying it. And I don't know if that's necessarily applicable to this situation. Let's see what they seem to think so. Reports of former President Donald Trump's possible mishandling of federal documents found at his Perva-Lago resort, that's not the way they refer to it, has prompted legal experts this week to handicap, could Trump be charged with a crime? No, if that's the only question, that's vague enough for me to say, yeah, of course, absolutely. He could be charged with any number of crimes, and we could spend an hour or two going over those. But they mean this crime? Some were quick to speculate, yes, though it's not clear a former president could be charged by the Justice Department for mishandling documents, even classified information. One former Trump advisor said it was highly possible that no criminal case would ever materialize. That's always true. But added, if I was Trump, I would be taking it seriously. Well, not if he were really Trump. There are clear laws that protect federal records with varying degrees of likelihood of their application. Here's what legal experts tell CNN. Can Trump keep or destroy government records after leaving the White House? The Presidential Records Act of 1978 outlines the ways official records should be maintained during a presidency and turned over at the end of an administration. Based on CNN and others' reporting, it appears some of the requirements of the act may not have been followed during the Trump presidency. Yes. Instead, official White House records were ripped apart or flushed down toilets, and at least 15 boxes of records made their way to Perva-Lago. Some of the documents recovered from Mar-a-Lago in recent months contained records the National Archives believed were classified, according to the New York Times. Some of the reporting is that they were, stamped, classified, and top secret and stuff like that. Difficult to miss. Legal experts tell CNN that any unauthorized retention or destruction of White House documents raises a red flag under criminal law that prohibits the removal or destruction of government records. But for a charge like this to fly, prosecutors would need to show that Trump had, quote, willfully violated the law. A high bar, though one that prosecutors could potentially meet given the frequent efforts within the White House to try to preserve records Trump would habitually mutilate. Furthermore, other criminal laws could come into play as well if an investigation by the Justice Department progresses. If the intent was, let me get these documents taken out of the way because they could look bad, then they could be damning for me in an investigation, in a lawsuit. Then you're talking about potential obstruction of justice. So the devil will be in the details here, said CNN legal analyst Ellie Honig. Are there other laws with teeth? Well, somewhere there must be. Maybe, it says. One criminal law prohibits destroying government property provided the person charged intentionally violated the law. As a former officer of the United States, Trump also has an ongoing obligation to protect classified information he received as president, which, by the way, now would be a good time to review the fact that, yes, former presidents usually keep a fairly high security clearance and are entitled to security briefings from the intelligence community on a regular basis. We have to worry about that. Okay, boy, I got everything going on today. I had to take a pause for a brief sneeze there. And not usually an issue during the show, but okay. Well, at any rate, glad you didn't have to hear that. But you could hear it in my voice. Woo, all of a sudden, I gotta go. Anyway, we have to worry about what people are briefing him on, and hopefully, he's paying just as little attention to the briefings. Or maybe he's not even asking for the briefings. I don't know what you have to do to put something like that in motion. But he might have asked for it, asked one of his staffers, get me one of those briefings that makes you feel important and make sure I get it not too early. I want to be able to play golf first, and et cetera, et cetera. I don't have any doubt that he would want to avail himself of it, but that he'd forget about it 5 minutes later. Anyway, a national security advisor to President Bill Clinton, Sandy Berger, you may remember, was prosecuted for removing classified documents from the National Archives by stuffing them into his pants during the 9/11 Commission investigation. That sounds unusual, but okay. I guess so. I don't know. For some reason, I thought about it. I thought that it was in his socks for some reason. But that does seem like a really small space for documents. Pants seems much more likely. No mention in here, for some reason, of Fawn Hall, who, of course, stuffed the documents into her clothing as well. But I don't know. Others have brought her up. You remember her? Probably not. I mean, I don't know what the average age of the audience is, but even so, she was a minor figure. But you may remember her from Iran-Contra. She was the assistant to Oliver North and did his dirty work, sneaking documents out of the executive offices. Even so, a case over the mishandling of national security secrets can get complicated quickly. That's because there's no central system in the federal government that standardizes what's classified, and different agencies may have different views and make different judgment calls on classification. A Justice Department investigation would likely look into various agencies' determinations on the records. Trump's defense would be that he's president and governed them all, according to one legal expert who previously handled classification issues in the government. The problem, of course, is he's not president anymore. What would Trump have to do to declassify documents? Well, this issue arose in court during Trump's presidency when news organizations pursued classified records related to the Russia investigation after the White House or Trump had publicly talked about declassifying them. And remember, that is a power available to sitting presidents, is the ability to, at their discretion and on their whim, essentially, declare something declassified all by themselves and without any approval necessary from the intelligence community. And this came up, I think, first came to our attention during the Scooter Libby incident, when it became apparent that he and or the vice president and or others in the vice president's office may have, not inadvertently, may have revealed classified information when outing Valerie Plame, remember her, in order to get back at, well, I can't even remember, is it Wilson? Was that his last name? Joe Wilson, do I have it right? Do I have it wrong? I can't remember. Valerie Plame, I remember, and she stayed in the news a lot longer than her husband, the ambassador, who found, the report about, was looking into the reports about yellow cake and its availability to Iraqi weapons makers, et cetera, and in order to discredit him, outed his wife as a CIA operative, which was classified information, but that they said, no, the president can declare that stuff declassified instantly whenever he wants to, essentially. So one way to get out of charges for revealing classified information is, if you have the president on your side or in your pocket, or you are the president, you can simply declare what you did not to have been the revelation of classified material by instantly declassifying the material, even if it's stupid and dangerous to do so. And that's certainly going to be no barrier for Donald Trump. So what would he have to do to declassify documents? In one of the cases, Justice Department official Brad Weinsheimer, it sure looks like Weisenheimer, but it's not. It's Weinsheimer, said no order had materialized to declassify the Carter-Page Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act applications, which were the sought-after documents, even after official statements had suggested they could be released. So he didn't even go through whatever process he needed to go through. In another, then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows said Trump's tweets about declassifying documents weren't self-executing declassification orders, and instead the decision-making stayed with a federal agency under Trump, according to a court filing. So that's interesting news to find out, too, after 4 years of insisting that his tweets could, when they needed them to be official statements, should be regarded that way, and when they didn't want them to be regarded, even if it was after the fact, where they realized how dumb it was, they didn't want them to be regarded as official statements. No, you can't take that as official documentation. Let's see. Brad Moss, a lawyer who unsuccessfully sought declassification of the Page FISA warrant in court, said the president declassifying information requires his decision in writing. That could be as simple as crossing out the classified markings at the tops of the pages, or as formal as submitting documents to the White House counsel's office, Moss said. That's interesting. The questions that remain about classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, Moss said, are, did he know? When did he decide to put those documents there? And did he take any action to declassify them before he left office? These are all interesting questions. Plus Marcy's question yesterday, I think still unanswered. How did the National Archives come to be aware of the fact that there were boxes, or 1, 15, or any, in Trump's possession? That part of the story is not clear. Could the Presidential Records Act prompt charges? No. The law has no criminal enforcement mechanism, so in effect the act is toothless, said George Clark, a Washington-based attorney who brought 2 lawsuits over the Trump White House's records retention practices in recent years. In his lawsuits, which were jointly pursued by the government watchdog group Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, historians and archivists complained that notes and translations of Trump's meetings with foreign powers, including Russian President Vladimir Putin, didn't exist or hadn't been preserved, and that White House staff used encrypted messaging systems for official business. But the courts threw out the cases, finding that judges had no authority to micromanage the presidency. Oh well, too bad about that. It's so frustrating, Clark said, looking back at his lawsuits. All the cases we brought were pointing out how bad the record keeping was and how many times they violated it. The courts didn't bite. So that doesn't actually directly answer the question of Section 2071. That's disappointing. I thought we were maybe we'd get there. But, well, maybe I can take a look at what they were tweeting during the break and see if there's more, and we just went down the wrong path with that one. Anyway, good luck to me trying to control the rest of the show with the keyboard. We'll be right back. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong, with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. Okay, there we go. Gosh, everything's back in circulation now. I don't know how long I would have to charge this mouse for in order to be able to rely on it, but at the very end, you heard the music bump up there. I guess it just needed, I don't know. I don't know if it really needed a charge, because I only charged it for the 2 minutes that we were away. Less than that even, but maybe it just needed an electric shock. So I think everything should be back to normal now, and I can turn up the music. It was a little soft sounding. And I'm sure that disturbed very many of you. I wanted to jump back and see what Empty Wheel was doing with this and talking about, because not enough discussion of the section of law that was mentioned for my tastes. You know how those run. And I jumped back over to her Twitter feed, and I see she says she's in the middle of a thread here. Turns out that there's an entire Wikipedia page dedicated to Trump's declassification, and she puts that in scare quotes, his declassification of sensitive intelligence, which doesn't even have my favorite one. So that's interesting, mostly because I want to get to what's the favorite one. But I'm going to take a look at the Wikipedia page, Donald Trump's disclosures of classified information. And what's the point of reading the page? It's dense. If there doesn't, if the favorite one isn't there, because she's going to tell us what the favorite one is if we click enough. Let's see. In fact, here it is. My favorite Trump, quote, declassification was the time he could have tipped off the accused Vault 7 leaker that he was suspected of the leak. Okay. I'm sure that means something to somebody. Let's see which one of this is about here. She's, of course, linked her article about it. Let's see. Revisiting the first time Trump blabbed out classified information. That would have been back on March 15th, 2017. I kind of want to click on that and find out what this is about here. I'd like to revisit the first time in his presidency that Donald Trump blabbed out highly classified information for political gain. Trump appears to have endangered the investigation into the CIA's stolen hacking tools, all to blame Obama for the leak. It happened on March 15th, 2017, during an interview with Tucker Carlson, to no one's surprise, amid a long exchange where Tucker challenges Trump, asking why he claimed 11 days earlier that Obama had, quote, tapped Trump Tower without offering proof. Trump blurted out that the CIA was hacked during the Obama administration. Do any of you remember this? There's audio, but we'll just read the bit of the transcript here in the hopes that it's just partial transcript. And all right, anyway, and then we're saving times this way. Tucker says, on March 4th, 6:35 in the morning, you're down in Florida and you tweet, the former administration wiretapped me, surveilled me at Trump Tower during the last election. How did you find out? You said, I just found out. How did you learn that? And Trump says, and this gives us the chance to do the Trump voice, of course, I've been reading about things. That's nice, right? I read in, I think it was January 20th. Really? I mean, January 20th is kind of an important date. Are we talking about 2017? Okay. All right. Well, anyway, I think it was January 20th, a New York Times article. And they were talking about wiretapping. There was an article. I think they used that exact term. I read other things. I watched your friend Brett Baer the previous day, where he was talking about certain very complex sets of things happening and wiretapping. I said, wait a minute. There's a lot of wiretapping being talked about. I've been seeing a lot of things. He's so coherent. God, I love when the way he intellectualizes. It's fantastic. It's so inspiring. Now, for the most part, I'm not going to discuss it because we have it before the committee, and we will be submitting things before the committee very soon that hasn't been submitted as of yet. But it's potentially a very serious situation. So he said nothing here. All right, so Tucker says, so 51,000 people retweeted that, so a lot of people thought that was plausible. They believe you. You're the president. You're in charge of the agencies. Every intelligence agency reports to you. Why not immediately go to them and gather the evidence to support that? It's actually not a bad question. And Trump says, because I don't want to do anything that's going to violate any strength of an agency. You know, we have enough problems. And by the way, with the CIA, I just want people to know, the CIA was hacked and a lot of things taken. That was during the Obama years. That was not during us. That was during the Obama situation. Mike Pompeo is there now, doing a fantastic job. But we will be submitting certain things, and I will be perhaps speaking about this next week. And then, of course, he never does. But it's right now before the committee, and I think I want to leave it at that. I have a lot of confidence in the committee. I don't even know what committee we're talking about. Tucker says, why not wait to tweet about it until you can prove it? Does it devalue your words when you can't provide evidence? This is like a Tucker Carlson that's like long gone even. It's funny. Trump says, well, because the New York Times wrote about it. You know, not that I respect the New York Times. I call it the failing New York Times. By the way, he's not president. They're still publishing. Just, putting that one out there. I don't love the New York Times. I'm just putting that out there. They did write on January 20th using the word wiretap. Other people have come out with, and then he's interrupted here. Tucker says, right, but you're the president. You have the ability to gather all the evidence you want. I do. But I think that, frankly, always a tell, frankly, we have a lot right now. And I think if you watch, if you watch the Brett Baer and what he was saying and what he was talking about and how he mentioned the word wiretap, you would feel very confident that you could mention the name. What? He mentioned it, and other people have mentioned it. But if you take a look at that's his other tell. Take a look. If you take a look, I don't know the evidence. I don't know what's really happening. If you take a look, you might find out what's happening. But if you take a look at some of the things written about wiretapping and eavesdropping, and don't forget, when I say wiretap, those words were in quotes. That really covers, because wiretapping is pretty old-fashioned stuff. But that really covers surveillance and many other things. And nobody ever talks about the fact that it was in quotes. But that's a very important thing. But wiretap covers a lot of different things. I think you're going to find some very interesting items over the next 2 weeks. This is third tell, 2 weeks. Man, what a bunch of gibberish. That guy can't, get a sentence out. I mean, neither can I, but I don't know. I'm better than he is. Anyway, the point is, Marcy jumps back in here. It was clear even at the time that it was referencing the Vault 7 files, about which I know nothing now that I think about it, now alleged to have been leaked to WikiLeaks by Joshua Schulte. The first installment of files were released 8 days earlier. The next day, Adam Schiff, who was then ranking House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence member, House Intelligence, right, likely had been briefed on the leak, responded to Trump's comments and suggested that while Trump couldn't have broken the law for revealing classified information, he should nevertheless try to avoid releasing it like this without any kind of consideration of the impact of it. And a quote here. Last night, the president stated on Fox News that, quote, I just wanted people to know the CIA was hacked and a lot of things taken. That was during the Obama years. In his effort to once again blame Obama, the president appears to have discussed something that, if true and accurate, would otherwise be considered classified information. It would be one thing if the president's statement were the product of intelligence community discussion and a purposeful decision to disclose information to the public, but that is unlikely to be the case. The president has the power to declassify whatever he wants, but this should be done as the product of thoughtful consideration and with the intent input from the agency affected, any agency affected. For anyone else to do what the president may have done would constitute what he deplores as, quote, leaks. Now, Trump did not, Trump did reveal information about the CIA, that the CIA is still considered classified, at the very least by saying that the CIA got hacked. He confirmed the Vault 7 documents were authentic files from the CIA, something the government was not otherwise confirming publicly at the time. Compare Mike Pompeo's oblique comments about the leak from a month later. His reference to the volume of stolen files may have been based on what the CIA learned from reviewing the initial dump. Court filings make it clear the CIA still did not know precisely what had been stolen. Okay, so you get the idea here. Without going on forever in this article, as, you know, she tends to do because she's very thorough about things. But I just wanted to get a flavor for what her favorite thing was. And then she goes on and tweeting about it today, saying, FBI to Trump, a little dialogue here. Mr. President, we may have to arrest this suspect because he's about to flee to Mexico. And Trump says, great, I'll go on Tucker Carlson about it. And around the time that Trump was blabbing to Tucker Carlson about the guy suspected of stealing all the CIA's hacking tools, said suspect left work, went home, and got his passport. What a dumb idea to tip him off that way. All right. Oh, and by the way, now people enjoying the old pictures or cartoons about Trump and his golden toilets and the things that he would flush them down. All right. Well, anyway, I didn't expect to be spending time on that. Let's spend some time on some other things instead. Let's see. Some things, more stuff about the Canadian supposedly trucker protest, but not really, I guess we could say. And then some other strange things that are floating around in Pocket. This was an interesting piece on found on Substack, and just not by me, just by people who I was clicking around with on Twitter. Twitter is the gateway to everything for me. I want to read this, but I also want to take note of the fact that the New York Times chimes in today with one of my least favorite headline constructions: trucker protests in Canada, what you need to know. I always hate that, but there it is. And I'm kind of curious to see What's the difference between what the New York Times thinks we need to know and what this other Substacker thinks we need to know? And see if you can spot the differences here. Let's see. Once narrowly focused on a vaccine mandate for drivers entering Canada from the U.S., the protests have ballooned into a sprawling campaign against various grievances. Ozzy Paibara is the writer here on the New York Times piece. Truck drivers protesting vaccine mandates are parking their rigs in the middle of intersections in Canadian cities, blocking traffic and in some places bringing daily life and business to a standstill. Mayor Jim Watson of Ottawa said, "We're in the midst of a serious emergency, the most serious emergency our city has ever faced." The protests quickly inspired similar convoys in Australia and New Zealand. Here is what you lowly worm, need to know. We'll grudgingly tell you, I don't know, I hate this, about how a handful of people turned Canada, whose constitution calls for peace, order, and good government, that's a good idea, into a unlikely springboard for a budding global movement. Oh, please, don't give him that platform. Why are truckers striking? Is that what they're doing? On it's January 22nd. Convoys of truckers departed from British Columbia en route to Ottawa, Canada's capital, to protest vaccine mandates imposed by the government of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for truckers entering the country from America. Mr. Trudeau initially dismissed the protesters as a small fringe minority. A majority of Canadians say they support public health measures intended to slow the spread of the coronavirus, but the protesters are having an outsized impact for their small numbers. Tea Party, hello. After first blocking traffic in Ottawa, the truckers later staged similar protests in other cities, including Toronto, Quebec City, and Calgary, as well as on the Ambassador Bridge to Detroit, a vital link for the automobile industry. And I saw a tweet today that suggested that maybe I had the flow of things backwards and that maybe it is American-made auto parts being sent to Canada for assembly. I don't know. But at any rate, if it's the Canadian auto workers who are seeing their plants shut down and being temporarily laid off because they don't have the parts that they need, so much the easier. They don't need to cross a border in order to go punch people in the face. But I don't know if they'll do that. They're Canadians. They're very polite. I don't really need to encourage people to be punching one another in the face. We got plenty of that as it is. So, in Ottawa, the protesters are hunkering down. They are now tent encampments, tables with hot coffee and mittens. Not they are now tent, but there are now tent encampments. Even some allies of Mr. Trudeau say the overall target of the protesters, pandemic restrictions, is worth examining. Even the liberal Atlantic guy says everybody needs to be able to have dinner parties without guilt. Joel Lightbound, or maybe Joel, because there's a little umlaut there over the E. I've not seen that. A liberal member, and maybe French, right? I don't know. Anyway, a liberal member of parliament from Quebec, boom, said that people worried about the government policies had legitimate concerns, careful with legitimate, and that Mr. Trudeau should not demonize people worried about restrictions. What are the impacts of these protests? Or rather, what's the impact of these protests? The goal is to disrupt daily activities for residents and slow down the economy in order to force federal officials to roll back pandemic restrictions. Mayor Watson has described the protest as unbearable and has declared a state of emergency. During the first 11 days of the protests, truck horns blasted up to 16 hours a day. Crowds of protesters are roaming the streets of Ottawa, many wearing Canadian flags as capes or carrying them on hockey sticks. Dangerous. Some residents say they have been harassed on the streets and recount being frightened or even chased. The police were investigating a possible arson attempt in the lobby of an apartment building downtown. Some automakers ran plants at reduced capacity and canceled shifts because of delays created by blockades. Protest organizers raised about 10 million Canadian dollars, about $7.8 million US, through GoFundMe from the Freedom Convoy cause, though only a small fraction of that has been dispersed. After consulting the police, the company shut down the campaign and said it would refund the rest of the money to donors, citing violence and other unlawful activity during the demonstrations. Can the government clear the protesters out? That's tough. There have been thousands of demonstrators, and Mr. Trudeau has ruled out using the military to disband the protests. All the towing companies contracted by the city of Ottawa have refused to tow the vehicles. Steve Kanalakos, the city's manager, told reporters. More than 400 trucks and other vehicles were illegally parked throughout downtown, including right across from the Parliament building. The police seized canisters of fuel that were being delivered to the protest encampments. Steve Bell, Ottawa's deputy police chief, described the protesters as highly determined and volatile. Police officials there have asked for 1,800 more officers, which would be more than double the current size of the force. Who's leading the protests? The protests, which were once narrowly focused, have mushroomed into a sprawling campaign supporting, in some cases, far-right anti-government grievances. Tamara Litch is a key organizer of the Freedom Convoy that arrived in Ottawa. She previously worked as the secretary of the relatively new Maverick Party, a right-of-center group that was started to promote the separation of Canada's 3 western prairie provinces from the rest of the country. She is also a former fitness instructor, hooray, who has sung and played guitar in an Alberta band called Blind Monday. So qualified. Maxime Bernier is leader of the far-right People's Party of Canada, whose members are well represented among the protesters in Ottawa. The party has no seats in the federal parliament. James and Sandra Bauder, B-A-U-D-E-R, are leaders of a group calling itself Canada Unity, another main organizer of the truck caravan. According to Sky News, Mr. Bauder is a supporter of the QAnon conspiracy theory and has openly called for Mr. Trudeau to be put on trial for treason over his COVID policies. What did protest leaders say they want? Speaking at a news conference in Ottawa, Ms. Litch said, "Our departure will be based on the Prime Minister doing what is right, ending all mandates and restrictions on our freedoms." Mr. Bernier has denounced vaccine mandates and previously railed against immigration and multiculturalism. The Bowders have said, among other things, that they support, quote, the Constitution and democratic process and, quote, remain committed to following lawful process and upholding freedom of choice, except for everybody else. What happens now? Brace for more protests. Prominent far-right figures in several countries, including the United States, Australia, and Germany, have praised the protests, and copycat caravans, I would say, have already appeared in Australia and New Zealand. Brian Braze, a trucker, said he was organizing a similar effort in the United States. According to messages posted on social media, the convoy may start in Sacramento and head to Washington, D.C. Organizers and participants appear to be organizing via private message groups, including on Facebook, which can do nothing about it, and Telegram, which never wanted to either. All right, so that's it for what you need to know. Now what you're going to find out is going to be presented to you via this other Substacker guy, Matt Gurney, whose Substack is called The Line. Dispatch from the Ottawa front. Slowly, I don't know whether that's how they pronounce it, but remember that's the police chief there in Ottawa, Slolly or I don't know. I haven't seen the Canadian news to tell me. S-L-O-L-Y. Slolly, maybe, is telling you all he's in trouble. Who's listening? The scale of Ottawa's defeat is a jarring and continuing indictment of the capacity of the Canadian state, and the state must reverse this situation decisively, he wrote on February 9th. So 2 days ago. What's up here? It's datelined Ottawa, of course, but he says the dateline above is a bit of a stretch. This is actually being written at, perhaps ironically, a truck stop just outside Ottawa. I am returning to Toronto after another day in the capital, and I stopped here to eat and gather my notes for what will eventually be 2 separate dispatches. The first ran on Tuesday, and this one will go out shortly after I return to, I guess I should say, Toronto, as they sometimes hear them say. Toronto, gather my notes and do some laundry and try to wrap up what I've seen over the past few days into something coherent. This one you're reading now is also where I will recount the strangest, most concerning incident I experienced in Ottawa, one that explains why I think the police have been so reluctant to act. And I'll tell you, I've read through this, and it seems a little nebulous. And, all the threats from this thing are veiled. You should be aware of that. But he clearly wants you to try and read through that veil somehow and see what's going on. So, This is, he says, the strangest, most concerning incident, and why he thinks the police have been so reluctant to act. They know what they're up against, to be frank. Most of us don't. And at least one person is trying to tell us. At the start of this week, I spent 2 days among the protesters in downtown Ottawa, wandering the lines of trucks on Wellington, on Kent, and on the other roads all around Parliament Hill. I've tried to convey for readers what it's like to be there, at least what it's been like for me to be there. This is a complicated protest and a complicated event. It has layers. Are there good, frustrated people just trying to be heard in the crowd? Yes. Are there bad people in the crowd, including some who've waved hate symbols and harassed or attacked others? Yes. Are there people taking careful care of the roads, sweeping up trash and shoveling ice and snow off the sidewalk? Yes. Are there hard men milling about, keeping a wary eye on anyone who seems out of place? Yes. Is it a place where some people are having good-natured fun? Yes. Is it a place where some other people would be rightly afraid to go? Yes, and so on. But it's even more complicated than it looks. And Ottawa Police Services Chief Peter Slawley, I'm going to try that pronunciation, wants you to know that. Slawley is in a tough spot. I don't honestly know the backstory of the how and the why that the Ottawa protest was allowed to settle into the downtown core the way it did. It was obviously a massive intelligence and planning failure, a little bit like our own 1-6. But what kind of failure? And whose? Did they not have enough information? Bad information? Did they have good information that for whatever reason they didn't accept or trust? That's not the sort of thing you can discover wandering the site, but I can tell you that some of the protesters themselves are surprised by how easy it was for them to set up shop. I do liken it, I think, in that sense, to the 1-6 situation, the January 6th insurrection here in the United States. And, of course, you know exactly where that happened. Yeah, all right. Well, I had another tangential thought, but perhaps we'll come back to that later on. Anyway, I have the terrible feeling, and I've spoken with 5 separate sources in government roles or in adjacent security positions who confirmed all of this, that Slawley is one of the damned few people in Ottawa who understands the situation he's in. And he's trying to get everyone else to notice, or at least to catch up to his understanding. My sources, alas, seem to think that most others involved in the decision-making are only just now starting to realize the enormity of the challenge in the capital. Slawley figured it out last week. And I remind you, one of the more interesting tidbits from the previous piece was finding out that all the tow truck contractors, it's not that they don't have the equipment to move the trucks, it's that they refuse to do it. That seems a little bit startling, and they might, in fact, need the military after all. That's what this piece eventually gets around to. Now, Slawley, the chief, right? The chief is very political, and I say that with no disrespect. Becoming the chief of a major police force isn't something that happens because you catch the most bad guys. It happens because you're good at working your way up through the power structures of a very particular institution. Good point. Slawley talks like a politician, but if you listen closely and if you follow along across his briefings, you start to see a theme. From the moment he first mentioned that there might not be a policing solution to this protest and hinted that we need the armed forces, he's been signaling to the public that Ottawa as a city has lost control of itself. That's a blunt description, but as I noted in a Twitter thread after a pretty remarkably stark Ottawa Police Services Board meeting on the weekend, Slawley was clear. The city needs to be rescued. It has lost control, it is outnumbered, and it cannot fix this problem with the resources on hand. And he includes and embeds, I guess, the start of that thread. We won't explore it just yet. But rescued from what? The crowd around Parliament Hill is mostly, not entirely, but mostly peaceful. I grant that. I've seen it with my own eyes. And a few minutes walk from those sites, now that the horns have been largely silenced by a court order, the city feels quite normal. The idea that Ottawa needs rescuing may seem absurd, but it's not. The longer this goes on, the harder it will become to convince the protesters to leave, and the harder it will be to stop others from joining in. The Ambassador Bridge, which links Windsor to Detroit, is now blocked. Would that have happened if Ottawa had been cleared quickly and decisively? The inaction that has so infuriated Ottawans and the very visible displays of police ineffectiveness as protesters fuel trucks from jerry cans despite the city's stated plan to stop such activity cannot be easily explained, and no doubt has multiple contributing causes. Some is probably simply political expediency, with all the various leaders wanting someone else to take the blame in case it goes badly, which it likely will. Some is probably just necessary delay while plans are made and logistics arranged. And then there's just the good old-fashioned problem of our expectations being a problem, as I've written about here. Canadian officials are struggling to realize just how deep in the muck they are, despite what seems like increasingly exasperated efforts by Slawley, and I believe a few others, to get them caught up to the present. I don't think most of our leaders are there yet. Also, there's this. There's another element of the protest that's nothing at all like a festival, which is how they describe it elsewhere, right? You may have heard reports of a secondary encampment that is well removed from the main protest sites around Parliament Hill. I certainly had. I hadn't, but he has. It has been described in different reports as either a logistics area or some kind of staging ground for protesters. It is a parking lot outside of a baseball diamond, RCGT Park. Not familiar with it, but perhaps you are. Right next to a large Marriott hotel, and though not far from Parliament, it's well removed from the main sites. Sending protesters into the parking lot was actually the city's idea. It had directed some trucks there earlier in the protest. After the city had removed an encampment from Confederation Park, some of the people there, as well as supplies, vehicles, and a shack, they brought their own little shack, were relocated to the parking lot at RCGT Park. The largest police enforcement action to date, a raid to confiscate fuel, was actually conducted at this site, too. Now, before I came to Ottawa, I spoke with a few people who were sympathetic to the protest, and I was advised to stay away from this secondary encampment site, or at least to approach it with caution. We'll continue with this and find out what happened when he approached it anyway after this. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Shall we continue then reading the Substack of, I should scroll back and make sure I got it right, Matt Gurney. And now his description of that secondary site over by the RCGT Park parking lot from which he was warned to stay away. Well, he says, I wasn't feeling particularly heroic on Tuesday, but I figured it wouldn't make sense to travel all the way from Toronto and then ignore one of the main sites. I drove over, parked my car nearby, and walked the rest of the way to the parking lot. It was clear well before I even arrived that this was something different. There was absolutely no visible police presence, not a single uniformed officer or marked cruiser. Note my careful phrasing there. I have no doubt this place is under watch, just not overtly. This site, for lack of a better term, has been fortified. There are many trucks parked in the parking lot, but some of them have been arranged to form outer walls. These walls have been augmented with wooden sawhorses and what looked to me to be stacked pallets of some kind. There was an entrance with a tent marked reception. He's got a photo of it below. It's like one of those camping canopies where they've also draped some additional tarps from the cover, the top of the canopy. It's an open canopy with just the 4 posts at the corners, but they've closed up the space with tarps and then hung a handwritten sign on a piece of oak tag there that says reception. But okay. Let's see. I wish I could give you a better description of the site. Me too. Or tell you what was inside, but as soon as I began to approach it on foot, someone very quickly fell into step behind me. A series of others, 4 or 5, met me before I made it to the reception tent. That's some reception. We chatted briefly, and I got the distinct impression that it would be way, way better for me to Be somewhere else. I left. They did not threaten me. Everybody was polite and all smiles, but it was extremely clear to me, you have to sort of read between the lines here, extremely clear to me that my presence was unwelcome. It was also clear to me that these people were organized. This is wildly different from the sites closer to Parliament. As I have written in the earlier dispatches, during the daytime, it's something of a festival atmosphere along Wellington. At night, it is more grim and much more tense, but I still had no concerns or issues walking through the entire area. This encampment near the stadium, that was something else. Later that day, by chance, I found out that a friend of mine had been in town and had decided to go check it out for herself. She told me she was able to get inside by slipping in with a larger group. Once she started taking pictures, she immediately began to be followed, and she was tailed until she left shortly thereafter. She wasn't harmed or threatened, and agreed with my description of the residents as organized, polite, and very clear in their desire for you to leave. She had a much better view of the entire area, and reports that the perimeter was pretty secure. Where it wasn't, she said, there were small groups standing on guard. Her impression matched my own entirely. This group is disciplined, organized, and on alert for outsiders. My encounter at the site intrigued me. I made some calls. My sources on the ground are pretty good in the sense of federal politics, but not great in terms of the local governance. Still, each call I made went similarly. The police are very much aware of the site, and they are very worried about the presence of hard right-wing organized factions there that aren't there to protest mandates and vaccine passports, but to directly create conflict with the government. This hard right element probably includes some non-Canadians here for the party. The broader complaints of the protesters are a cover for the group seeking open conflict. Most of the convoy protesters aren't part of this smaller, nastier group, nor linked to it in any overt way. Many of them will think any concern about it is all just some MSM lamestream media conspiracy. My government and security sources do not agree. What's happening in Ottawa, they were clear, is two separate events happening in tandem. There is a broadly non-violent, to date, group of Canadians with assorted COVID-related gripes ranging from the somewhat justified to the totally frickin' insane. But that larger group, which has knocked Ottawa and too many of our leaders into what my colleague Jen Gerson so perfectly described as, I gotta edit a little bit, as stun-effed, the word, stun-effed stasis. It's an odd phrasing. Anyway, this group is now providing a kind of mostly unwitting cover to a cadre of seasoned street brawlers, I guess think Proud Boys and Oath Keepers types, street brawlers whose primary goal is to further erode the legitimacy of the state, not just the city of Ottawa or Ontario or Canada, but of democracies generally. That does sound familiar. Some of them are ideologues, others just grifters, but they are real, and they're in Ottawa. Maybe not in that parking lot. I certainly didn't get the chance to take any names, but local officials know they're out and about and are worried that any move they make will trigger an incident that can easily result in dead cops, dead truckers, and delighted far-right agitators. And that's what has slowly worried, my sources tell me. Angry, disillusioned truckers can be talked down eventually, even if it takes a long time. The police know how to handle that. But there's another element here. Smaller, harder to find, but real, which is why Slowly has been referring to the intelligence he's seen and asking for help and saying he wants the military. Yes, some of that is undoubtedly him wanting someone else to step up and take some of the heat. Some of it seems rooted in a very real concern that what is unfolding in Ottawa is something our leaders haven't considered before and don't know how to handle, even if they accept it's real, which seems to be a work in progress. If that all sounds alarmist, I felt that way too. So I contacted 3 other sources, including one who's superbly well placed, and ran this scenario by them. 2 agreed, And one suggested I'm actually being too optimistic. So yeah, the bouncy castles and the F. Trudeau signs aren't really the story here. And if you're wondering why no one wants to act, it's because they're afraid of what they'll be unleashing. But there are ways to approach this. As I return to Toronto, my journey to Ottawa complete, I'll take the next 2 days to speak with my sources again and offer up on Friday, that's today, what I hope is a path to a non-violent, or at least minimally violent, outcome. Until then, from a truck stop outside of Ottawa, take care. So, geez, maybe I ought to check in and see whether there's anything new posted. We'll take the cheap way around and say, let me read it first before subscribing. But I think that's actually the latest one. So sometime later on Friday, if it comes through as promised, some hint at what might work as a solution. But yeah, it's getting to be the sort of problem up there that they might need to use the military to undo. And certainly, if the tow trucks won't move the trucks, then somebody's got to do it. And, we joked at first that the military should be called in to do it. But, I can't. First of all, I shouldn't be joking about calling out the Canadian military. That's for you Canadians to joke about. However, I will say I did think just yesterday, if they were having trouble and they needed the military and they still thought they might be outnumbered, I just had a great idea for a NATO joint exercise. Canada's a NATO member, and wouldn't exactly be an Article 5 invocation because it's not a foreign attack, unless, of course, it's Russian or even American-led, this attack. But there is still room for coming to the rescue of a fellow NATO member, or just an excuse for joint maneuvers at a time when we're at heightened tensions over Ukraine, but you don't necessarily want to have all of those exercises taking place in Ukraine. Get some practice up in Ottawa. Help out clearing the streets of Ottawa and making sure that things don't get out of hand. All right, well, interesting situation, and well worth remembering that, it's a real and delicate situation up there, and they're going to have to figure out a way out of it, and they might need some help doing it. All right. Let's look at some other items that I've parked in Twitter. Here's an interesting but weird one. You may have seen in the last day or two. I took note of it in the Morning Post. Just as yesterday was occupied by the previous day's discussion about the other cultural distraction, and now I'm even blanking on what the hell it was we were talking about. What was it that everybody was, the gazpacho thing, yes, that was of some interest. But other things that, why am I blanking on this now? Anyway, this, now, oh yes, right, no, the Atlantic article about whether everybody should feel no guilt. There's another weird article out there. What was it, in the Wall Street Journal? It was like provocatively titled, why I'll be wearing my shoes in your shoeless apartment or whatever it is. Like why I won't obey the house rules for people I visit who want everybody to take their shoes off when they enter. And, everybody, of course, up in arms about this thing. And there was cultural offense being taken by people whose culture dictates that you don't wear your shoes inside the house. I don't know that they were targeting them so much with their article, but who knows? But anyway, it was weird and everybody had something to say about it. I, kind of, sort of, yes, no. But I didn't have anything to say about it, my own thoughts on it. Hey, you get to somebody's house, and if they say they want you to wear the shoes on your head, if you want to visit this person, you got to put up with their house rules. It's their house. But I don't know. Anyway, but I did see a very interesting thread by, somebody I haven't encountered before. Danielle, Chalakian is my best attempt at the name displayed here. Danielle IAT is how you can find her on Twitter. Danielle spelled the way you'd think it would be. Danielle, and then IAT. Maybe your initials at the end. Anyway, She says, and this was intriguing and funny at first, but she's got a point here. I can't stop thinking, she says, about how that I'm going to wear shoes in your house and you can't stop me piece is representative. We always have to get deep on things here, but this is what makes Twitter great and what makes people great, I think. I can't stop thinking about that piece and how it's representative of our larger current trend of white mega grievance over the mildest discomfort or inconvenience, especially if caused by someone else's boundaries. Oh boy, we might be onto something here. Like, that piece intentionally wasn't framed as I'm not comfortable taking my shoes off when I visit other people's homes. And it wasn't just for clickbait. It was beyond even entitlement. A manifest sense of righteous indignation at a perceived injustice. Like, that is weird. But the injustice is other people's having a custom that you personally don't enjoy. And yet, it's not enough to say, I disagree with this, my preference is this. It has to be this aggressive bullying stance. It's a real cultural sickness, and it's worrisome. I thought that was a really weird way of putting it in the headline. Why I'll be wearing my shoes in your shoeless house. Well, no, you won't. You won't be allowed into the house. Oh, yes, I will. I will kick my way in, and I will stomp around in my shoes. And I don't think that that's a realistic approach to anything in life, but that's why it was so concerning, I guess. It's unfortunate that whites' response to a lack of culture... What? I'm not even certain what I'm reading here. But this has a point. Trust me. I have read through this. I might have just started wrong. It's unfortunate that whites' response to a lack of culture seems to have been to make bullying and aggression a type of culture. Yeah, you see what's going on here? White people, you don't have a culture. Well, there's many cultures and there's many different kinds of white people, but I get your point. But there's the response to a lack of culture seems to be, well, I'm going to be mad about other cultures instead. You should all have no culture, just like me. So the reaction is to make bullying and aggression a type of culture. I guess that is a white culture. Or really lean into that historic behavior. All right, well, okay. Anyway, as she says, at the end, damn it, once again, she tweeted instead of writing a damn column for money. When will she learn? Good point. And probably, I hope you do go and get paid for it. She's a columnist for Jezebel, among other things. And an interesting point and an interesting discussion bit here. Okay, let's see. Oh, okay. Scott has a suggestion for something on the Canada item too, but he does wisely warn you might want to read a bit ahead before speaking out loud. And Jalopnik, again, you love the Jalopnik as a source. Why won't the link work? Okay. Well, let's see. Maybe you can, I don't know, I can't make the link work. It won't let me click through. It just wants to give me the option of answering you rather than, or giving you one of the little icons. Here we go. I'll open it up here. Fed up Ottawa residents use pornographic metal song about gay cowboys to disrupt freedom convoy. What planet am I on? What? All right. I mean, you're right. I'm clearly going to want to read ahead in order to be sure about what I'm getting into here. But I'm certainly intrigued by pornographic metal song and the gay cowboys aspect of it has got me intrigued too. Counter protesters are turning to, this gives away the store on this, I guess. And now that we know it's a pornographic metal song about gay cowboys, counter protesters are turning to Ram Ranch by Grant McDonald. And, okay. I mean, I'll give you the sense of what's going on here. While it seems Canadian law enforcement and political officials are happy to remain locked in the grip of conspiracy theorists, white supremacists, and people who don't understand basic science, the people of Ottawa have had enough. I think I've put the emphasis there wrongly, but you get the idea. While they're happy to remain in the grip of conspiracy theorists and also the grip of white supremacists and people who don't understand science, regular people in Ottawa have had enough, and they are turning to an unusual and powerful weapon, pornographic metal music. That is an unusual weapon. I did not realize that was a genre until today, our writer says, but I'm thrilled to find out it exists. Our writer, by the way, Aaron Marquis, again, at Jalopnik, which is something that Scott reads more often than I would have guessed, but they do come up with some good material. All right, what do we say here? Counter-protesters are playing Ram Ranch, a 2012, it's been around a while, 10-year-old, porno metal song by Canadian artist, no wonder I don't know, Grant McDonald, on the Truckers' various Zello channels. Zello is a walkie-talkie style chat app used by the Freedom Convoy because, what, they're not tough enough to have CB radios? What is up with these people? Anyway, so there we go. 12 years old. And you know, they have that's a big thing in Canada. Is playing the music of Canadian artists is a big deal. I think there's even like a legal obligation of the radio stations, or at least so I've heard. Maybe that's a rumor or a urban legend, or maybe it's just Canadian. Anyway, in a recent chat on a Zello channel, I'll try to be careful here, titled Windsor Convoy 2, a group of people supporting the trucker convoy, a Canadian protest, it's the protest against vaccine mandates, etc., plus other stuff, apparently, that's secret, started an impromptu sing-along for the national anthem. Canada, you know how it goes, the actual words, and one person sang off-key, followed by another crooning just as poorly, True Patriot, love with all our sons command. And that's apparently not quite right, because we got the little sick mark here. Then comes a loud guitar riff. 18 naked cowboys in the showers at Ram Ranch, a voice screams. They're removed from the chat before they can continue the next lyrics, which are the ones that Scott says you want to read ahead and don't, read aloud, because there's not enough bleeping to handle this whole thing. But if you've ever heard the song, congratulations. You're probably Canadian, living in the past, and maybe a gay cowboy, maybe not, I don't know, but that's pretty wild. Well, anyway, given that it's a porno metal is the genre we're talking about, apparently, and gay cowboys, and we start with the fact that there's 18 naked cowboys in the showers at Ram Ranch. The next lyric, it is what it is. That's what's going to happen with gay cowboys in the shower together at Ram Ranch. Just what you would imagine. Welcome to the Ram Ranch Resistance. It's got a hashtag and everything. A loosely organized counter movement to the trucker convoy. And I got to imagine that some of the tough guys in the trucker caravan there are probably pretty homophobic. And so the idea is, I'm sure, that they'll, disturb and annoy them with this song. The lyrics played in the chat are from Ram Ranch, the 2012 porno metal classic, by Grant McDonald, that ascended to meme status thanks to lyrics like, 18 naked cowboys wanting to be, blah, blah, blah. You get, it starts off with the F word there, and then the various things that will rhyme with that are also included. Damn, those are some spicy lyrics, Aaron says. Organizers used the song after listening in to the Truckers' Zello channel to identify the Freedom Convoy's next moves and finding homophobic, bigoted, and hateful language. So good call there. The hashtag Ram Ranch Resistance is now being used on social media, and a website, ram-ranch.ca, for you Canadians, is helping organize the counter-protesters. Welcome to Ram Ranch has even been seen on signs in the streets of Ottawa, and Tinder users are catfishing truckers and directing them to meet up at Ram Ranch. So it's one part Ram Ranch, another part Rickroll. I'm just totally elated that my song could be used to stand up for science, McDonald told Rolling Stone. He's recorded over 500 versions of Ram Ranch to the delight of his fans, along with other toe tappers like Prince Harry's 12-inch, you can guess the rest, I guess, and Ya Sure Are Hung. So he seems like a fun guy. Not only is the strategy kind of brilliant, if a bit juvenile, but then again, so is endlessly blasting truck horns in the city streets. It's at least working to annoy and disrupt truckers. Yet Ram Ranch has prevailed as a clarion call for resistance, though other vulgar sounds have also been introduced to the chats as well. The ranch guys are finally gone, but it's about freaking time. I'd have to shut that off, one person is heard saying in a clip from the chat, immediately followed by a robotic voice saying, well, welcome to, some more stuff that we probably won't be reading aloud, but you should enjoy this and have fun. I'm going to give, of course, I'll give you the link. I don't even have to give you the link because Scott's got it. He sent it to me. And again, there's going to be questions, Scott, about why you read Jalopnik so often. Anyway, I believe you get the idea, and I believe I am happy to report that and certainly support the idea of disrupting this thing, particularly if they're going to be that homophobic about things. I think that's the way to go. Hopefully it's effective and at the very least fun. If you're enjoying it, I can't tell you how much we enjoy finding out that you're enjoying it. How about that? So that was an interesting twist. Thanks, Scott. Always appreciate that. And the heads up, the warning, of course. Well worth it, but you can all enjoy reading that piece on your own. It's fun. Okay, back to Pocket. Let's see what's going on. I know where I want to go in the next segment here. But maybe I just want to wait until after the break in order to take a look. Okay, how about this brief story here from where? Washington Post brings us this news, and I'll just read you the headline, but the good stuff is in the first paragraph of the story. Deputy Virginia Attorney General resigns after a revelation of Facebook posts praising January 6th rioters and claiming that Trump won the election. A deputy attorney general in Virginia. Well, that's like a fairly high-ranking official. And this is just basically to tell you that still the first days and weeks of the Youngkin administration are a total crap show. I don't know why we won't even allow ourselves to. I had the strongest urge yesterday to sign off yesterday's show as the music was playing, and I was telling you about Justice Putnam's show coming up and saying, we'll see you tomorrow, MFers, and just to catch you by surprise and see what happened. But I don't know. At any rate, very interesting that this happens to be going on. And like I said, the Youngkin administration is just garbage people top to bottom, and they're screwing everything up, but it's intentional. And it doesn't matter so much that it would demonstrate Republicans can't govern, because the Republican coalition at this point doesn't want governance. So there's no skin off their nose being found out that they can't govern the place. I don't know whether it's going to do what's going to do to Youngkin in his future, but I guess if it's not in business, but rather in politics, this is the only way forward for him. Anyway, so who is this person? This is a person previously known as Monique Miglia, who I guess, I don't know whether she's married or for other reasons changed her name, and was, anyway, serving as Deputy Attorney General under the name of Monique Miles. Nothing necessarily nefarious about it. I don't know. It was just weird. It just doesn't state up front exactly what her reason for changing her name is, but okay. But you have to know that she changed her name, because otherwise you're looking at Facebook posts from somebody with a different name, even though her name is still Monique, and you can't be sure it's the same person. But it is. So here's the post, or one of the posts in question here. Again, posted under the name of Monique Miglia. Newsflash, Patriots have stormed the Capitol. No surprise. The deep state has awoken the sleeping giant. Weird. Patriots are not taking this lying down. We are awake, ready, and will fight for our rights by any means necessary. Ooh, scary. Well, that's Monique on January 6th, 2021. And here in January, or now February of 2022, she's the Deputy Virginia Attorney General, or at least briefly. Justin Jovenel is the reporter on this. I believe we've called his name before. A top deputy overseeing election issues for record scratch. What? Yes, not just any deputy attorney general. A top deputy overseeing election issues for Virginia's new Republican Attorney General, who is a bit of a joke himself, resigned on Thursday after the Washington Post questioned the office about Facebook posts she had made praising rioters at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, and falsely claiming President Donald Trump won the 2020 election. Boy, am I glad to find out at the outset of this article that she has already resigned. But, the moderate Glenn Youngkin, the nice guy who just wants to help out suburban moms and wear his fleece vest and let parents have a voice, apparently QAnon wackos, deep state conspiracy theorists, and big lie proponents just want to have a voice in running Virginia's elections as well. I'll read through the rest of this thing after the break. I just want to give you all the details about that, and then we can move on to this other subject that's been waiting and waiting, and I have big plans for bringing it to you, but I could still get distracted. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. The big plans that I have to bring you this other piece, I'm scrolling and scrolling to look for. I know I put this aside originally, and I have a follow-up article to it that I believe links directly to the piece that I had in pocket for some time and just had to blow past. But at any rate, I think I can use the other story to link back to it. But okay, that's why I'm not quite prepared just yet. All right, but I'll leave it here for the moment, and we'll jump back to what we were reading before about the top deputy overseeing election issues for Virginia's new Republican Attorney General, who resigned on Thursday after being questioned by the Washington Post, or the department being questioned about these Facebook posts in support of the January 6th insurrectionists. Former Deputy Attorney General Monique Miles also espoused unfounded conspiracy theories about voter fraud and election interference in more than a dozen Facebook comments that spanned months. 4 people who interacted with Miles on Facebook confirmed the authenticity of the posts. But just another one of those examples of, who's really paying attention. We knew that the new Attorney General elected in the same election along with Youngkin was a bit of a joke and not particularly well suited to the job, but was handed to him politically. So, maybe the focus was on him and focus was on Youngkin and the mask mandate things. And just as is usually the case with state government, people just generally don't pay that much attention to who does the newly elected Attorney General bring in as top deputies. But I'm glad somebody had an eye on it. And I guess we say here, thank God for the reporters who do this stuff, because, as many troubles as we have with them and as many times as we will disagree with them about the tenor with which they approach the stories, I guess, if I'm even using the right word here, they do spot things like this. And this is important. And who pays attention to this? How is it that a top Deputy Attorney General for the state, somebody who's going to be in charge, they'll explain why, of elections issues, who's a big lie proponent, like that's seriously a huge focus of their life, manages to slip by everybody? And I mean, I don't know what kind of review process there is, and I don't think they get confirmed by the state Senate or anything like that, but really, people should be watching. Anyway, well, let's find out more by reading the piece. Victoria La Civita, a spokeswoman for Attorney General Jason S. Miyares, said the office had been unaware of the Facebook posts before the Washington Post, which obtained screenshots of the posts, shared them on Thursday morning. And I don't know, It's possible that they really weren't aware, but it seems difficult to believe. I mean, I actually think that's probably how she came to their attention, was that she did this stuff, and I think they may be lying about it. But it is possible that someone like Miyares, who, a little bit like Trump in that he wasn't really thinking he was going to win office and might have been caught unprepared and had to get started really quickly. But, every human resources department for any sensitive positions that they might be hiring for, even if it's entirely private business, everybody knows to go immediately to Facebook and social media and find out, is the person you're hiring there? And if so, are they a weirdo while they're there? But of course, that would just be a plus in a Youngkin administration kind of a place. Anyway, they say that they were unaware. They were probably not. This information was unknown to the Office of the Attorney General prior to this morning, La Civita said in a statement. Ms. Miles has resigned from her position at the Office of Attorney General. That's good. The Attorney General has been very clear, says the spokesperson. Joe Biden won the election, and he has condemned the January 6th attacks. That's the position you have to take in the fleece vest administration, which is interesting considering how he's trying to be Trumpy elsewhere. But that's the position he's staking out. Trumpy, but I don't look like it. In an email to the Post, Miles called the revelation of the Facebook posts a character assassination to stir up controversy and wrote that some liberals have their daggers out for black conservative females. Well, QAnon conspiracy theorists, yeah. The posts were made at a time when the news was still developing regarding the facts around the election, the court cases, the rally on the ellipse, and what happened at the Capitol, Miles said in the email. That was all before the audits occurred. These posts have been taken out of context, but the fact that they still exist is enough context. She added, what we know about the election today is very different from what we knew on Election Day 2020, or even what we knew on the day that President Biden was inaugurated in January 2021. I believe he is our president, and he was certified as such. Miles wrote the Capitol attack was being carried out by, quote, patriots on the afternoon of January 6th, and a couple of hours after the assault began and after a riot was declared. Newsflash, patriots have stormed the Capitol. That's the one we read earlier. Now, in response to someone who commented on the post, Miles wrote the riot was a, quote, peaceful protest. She added, don't believe the MSM. Of course, you know what that means. That they go on to explain it's an acronym. And all right, fine. Miles later edited the original post. But why? Well, to blame the violence at the Capitol on Antifa dressed as patriots. Yes, of course. They are much clearer now. Saying the supposed false flag operation was typical Antifa and BLM intimidation tactics. They helpfully explained BLM is typically used to refer to the Black Lives Matter movement, not the Bureau of Land Management, I guess, in case you wanted to. Anyway, okay, we got you. Miles went on to write, patriots are peace-loving, Antifa and BLM are not. You don't really want anybody like that in law enforcement generally, but certainly not as a deputy attorney general, and certainly not in charge of elections mechanisms. In other postings in the weeks after the 2020 presidential election, Miles made baseless claims that China interfered in the election and that there was evidence of significant voter fraud in Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Michigan, among other states, according to screenshots. At 2 points, she flatly and falsely declared Trump was the true winner of the election. Those left-wing loonies better realize that DJT is getting a second term, Miles wrote, referring to Trump by his initials. So a good, clean, clear, hard-headed legal analysis from the new Deputy Attorney General. Miles, who was the Deputy Attorney General for Government Operations and Transactions, had a broad purview that included representing the state in election-related litigation and giving legal advice to the Department of Elections and its governing body, the State Board of Elections, on various matters. So all for the good that she's out of there now. In the previous administration, I don't know what other hires, I don't know if she hired people and whether they're left behind, but we need a clean sweep of these jokers. Maybe that could be the next thing you work on there at the Post. In the previous administration, the division worked on how to stage elections during the pandemic, a legal dispute over whether Kanye West would appear on the 2020 presidential ballot in Virginia, and questions about whether ballots with certain issues would be counted. So an extremely important place, and just the place that a Trumpy person would be very pleased to have an equally or more Trumpy person in charge and legally endowed with the power to make the decisions about, say, how to conduct the 2024 elections or the 2022 elections and which ballots to count, et cetera, et cetera. All part of the operation to put people in place that would allow Trump to carry out the coup in 2024 that people have been worried about. And this is exactly the kind of person that they meant. But I'm surprised that she actually just resigned. I'm sure she was pressured to resign, but I'm surprised that it was that easy. The office also, it makes me actually, before I continue, it makes me suspicious that they've left other people behind, like I said, or we'll just replace her with another one. The office also handles litigation and legal advice related to the environment, transportation, technology, and energy, among other topics. Miles of Alexandria was among a handful of top aides Miyares announced when he took office last month. Friends described Miles as a stalwart conservative who is unafraid to make controversial claims on social media, which means you just don't belong in the Department of Justice here, or whatever we call our department on the state level. In 2015, Miles ran unsuccessfully for the Alexandria City Council, so those in Alexandria are probably rolling their eyes already. Oh, God, her, yeah. She also worked as a staff attorney for the Immigration Reform Law Institute, a conservative group seeking to curtail immigration. Miles is also the founding principal of an employment and labor law firm in Alexandria. She was named one of the state's top lawyers by Virginia Business Magazine in 2021. So congratulations there. You should probably take a look at that list of other top aides Miyares announced and look into the backgrounds of all those people. Quite honestly, a good project. It's linked if you want to make it your project. Miyares' personnel moves have drawn criticism from Democrats who questioned why he fired about 30 members of the Attorney General's office. They included the legal counsel of the University of Virginia, we noted that one, who had taken leave to serve as the top investigator for the House panel investigating the January 6th attack. I wonder if she had anything to do with that. I mean, being as she was so excited about it on Facebook, did she encourage the Attorney General to fire the Virginia UVA General Counsel, or was it something that he did on his own? We should check that out. Delegate Schuyler T. Van Valkenburg. Wow. Democrat from the Richmond area, and I say it that way because I always forget the proper pronunciation. It's my own state. Proper pronunciation of the county surrounding the Richmond area. Henrico is what it looks like, and then I was like, is it Henrico? I'm not really sure, and I've never bothered to find out. I just continue to make the mistake. Anyway, I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing the delegate's name right. Schuyler T. Van Valkenburg. What a name. Called the Facebook posts unsettling because Miles was in a position to be called on to give legal advice about election law. He said Virginia has worked to improve elections and increase ballot access in recent years. I think it's an incredibly troubling sign. This seems to be a lot in line with the National Republican Party saying January 6th is a normal political event. The Virginia Attorney General has put in place a person who apparently believes the same. Several acquaintances said Miles made the postings on a personal account, one of three the Post found for her on Facebook. The account handle for most of the postings was Monique Miglia, but was later changed to MYB Monique. I don't really know what that's about, but okay. The comments obtained by the Post are not publicly visible, but Miles had said they had not been deleted. Okay. A screenshot of the Post calling the rioters patriots was taken at 4:20 p.m. on January 6th, showing Miles' post was made about an hour earlier. By the time the post was made, rioters had breached the Capitol and broken into the Senate chamber. The Post and later edited version drew a number of angry comments from Miles' Facebook friends, according to one screenshot. They included one of Miles' high school government teachers who wrote, "I failed you." Well, she should have failed the class. You should have failed her. That's the problem. The teacher declined to comment. Gil Grimmett, an Oakland, California sculptor who had met Miles abroad in Japan and described her as kind, said he recalled the January 6th post and said it was a breaking point for him after weeks of posts from her supporting fringe political ideas. Grimmett said he muted Miles's posts in his Facebook feed afterwards. I'd pretty much drawn a line in the sand and she crossed it, Grimmett said. In the weeks leading up to the January 6th post, Miles regularly posted about the presidential election and debated with Facebook friends about its outcome. The posts came as Trump also pushed false claims about election fraud. In posts with one friend, she implied the military had classified evidence of election fraud or meddling, according to a screenshot. The China interference is real, Miles wrote. That is high-level national security stuff. They can't just release this evidence in civil court without following the proper protocol. You could just do it if you're Trump, right? In another exchange with the same person, Miles wrote, the MSM has been compromised by the CCP, possibly meaning the Chinese Communist Party. We are at war with the CCP and those that sold our country out to them, Miles wrote. Trump is here to take them down. Biden will never step his compromised self into the White House. Get it? In another exchange, Mazen Basrawi, a friend of Miles's from the University of Virginia, where both attended college, which makes me think again that she probably was the one behind the dismissal of the general counsel, asked whether Miles believed Trump won the 2020 election and wrote, there's zero evidence of widespread voter fraud. Yes, Miles replied, according to a screenshot. It's based on evidence of actual fraud in Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan, and other states, and violations of election laws and Constitution. You will see in the next few weeks. Basrawi wrote in response that what Miles was saying was extremely dangerous. I responded because I thought it was dangerous to espouse what are essentially lies about what happened in the Democratic election, he said in an interview. That sows division in a country that needs to be brought together. In yet another exchange, a Facebook friend told Miles that allegations of fraud from the 2020 election were being used to incite anger and violence to defend Trump's honor. Miles replied, they're not false allegations. You haven't seen the evidence yet. Things are about to get very real. This is a deputy attorney general talking about evidence. Miles also posted articles to Facebook supporting unfounded 2020 election conspiracy theories, including one that claimed that GOP ballots were rejected by Dominion voting machines in Georgia, and another about supposed voter fraud that was labeled false by Facebook. It's one of the few things that they'll label. Facebook and its lib fact checkers don't want you to see this, Miles wrote on the post. In mid-January 2021, Miles wrote on Facebook that a post of hers about a Trump rally had led to her being voted off a board she served on, according to a screenshot. She wrote she was upset that the post was included as a part of the board's election materials. Miles said that it's sad that there are a lot of people stricken with the mental illness of Trump derangement syndrome, who feel that somebody can't be a good person if they support Trump, and then they endeavor to silence that person by any means necessary. She loves that phrase. Omar Malehi, president of Metropolitan Washington Employment Lawyers Association, confirmed Miles had not been reelected to its board in January of 2021, but declined to say whether the January 6th posts played a role. They held a contested election for Ms. Miles' seat and other open seats in January of 2021, and there were more candidates than open board seats. She didn't receive enough votes to remain on the board. That's basically it. One of her other posts under the MYB Monique handle here. It's official. Voter suppression appears to be happening in precincts across the Commonwealth, as many are reporting that they don't have enough ballots. One precinct ran out at 11 a.m. and another at 10:15 a.m. What the heck? It is well known that GOP voters tend to vote in person on Election Day, so hashtag shenanigans, hashtag pray hard it works. I'm stationed in a registrar's office standing guard. I'm anticipating a long night because of all the Xerox ballots and people, GOP and DNC poll watcher pairs, needing to stay and watch the hand count to make sure our election is fair and not stolen. In her email to the Post, Miles wrote that it's important for people to be able to have free and open dialogue on topics of concern without being canceled. Democracy dies when civil discourse is squelched, she wrote. Civil discourse makes us stronger as a society. She wrote that the 2020 election had sparked greater interest in the integrity of the electoral process and that voter ID laws and rules are a must. One of the most recent screenshots of a Facebook post obtained by the Post came on November 2nd during general election in Virginia when Miyares beat Democratic incumbent Mark Herring. Miles wrote, voter suppression appeared to be happening at precincts across the Commonwealth. That's the one I just read you. She wrote that it was well known that Republican voters tend to vote in person, and that's why it was obviously voter suppression. Okay, that's the end of the article. Man, took longer than I thought, but she's crazier than I thought. Now, to turn our attention to the other thing I wanted to tell you about, and what the hell? I'll just jump right in here and make the switch. Has to do with, I think I hinted at it yesterday, what Greg Abbott, governor of Texas, is doing, largely a political stunt, having deployed the Texas National Guard to the border to guard it against, whatever the hell he thinks is going on at the border. And yeah, there's people crossing the border, but the National Guard, not really the outfit that should have been mobilized for it. But other governors followed suit. And there were stunts from other non-Texas governors sending their, dispatching their National Guard troops to the border. And some very bad things happening to the Texas troops that have been stuck there for a very long time. I'll jump in with the latest article that refers back to the earlier article that was, in fact, waiting in pocket somewhere, but I still haven't found it yet, from way back when we started to hear this bad news. Another Texas soldier on the border dies, this time in an accidental shooting. That piques my interest as a gun fail observer. Davis Winkie writing in Army Times, but hinting right away at previous problems. Another soldier dies. A Texas National Guard soldier assigned to secure the U.S.-Mexico border was killed, in this case by a fellow soldier, in an accidental shooting with his personal weapon on Monday, the Army Times has learned. The service member, whose identity Army Times is withholding pending notification of his family, is the second Texas soldier assigned to Operation Lone Star to die in an accidental shooting since January, when a soldier accidentally killed himself on New Year's Day. That's linked here, and you can take a look at that as well. He's the sixth soldier linked to the mission to die since October, though 4 of these deaths were suicides. And that was the original story I had put away, and it's linked here. 4 of these National Guard troops have killed themselves while deployed to the border, because it's confusion, it's miserable conditions, they're separated from their families, it's an unending mission in which they can do nothing, and it's all for the greater political glory of Greg Abbott, and it's driving them to suicide. Greg Abbott is killing our troops. Respect the troops, support the troops, have them kill themselves. On top of which, 2 others have been killed accidentally, but killed with personal weapons, which also appears to be plaguing, a difficulty plaguing the troops dispatched along the border. It's noted in here as well. According to documents obtained by Army Times, the soldier was sitting in the front seat of a parked car at Fort Clark Springs near Brackettville, Texas, where the unit was doing swim training, when he handed his gun to a soldier sitting behind him. The gun fired as the second soldier was taking it from his hands, i.e., he grabbed it and put his finger on the trigger and pulled it, accidentally, but not how you handle guns. The gun fired as the second soldier was taking it from his hands, sending a round through the seat and into the first soldier's back, the document stated. Medics at the training site tried to resuscitate the soldier. Paramedics were on scene within 5 minutes of the shooting and called for a helicopter evacuation to a trauma center in San Antonio. But it was too late. The soldier was pronounced dead at the scene. So, a wasted helicopter flight as well. But that's the least of our problems. The Texas Military Department announced Monday afternoon that a soldier died in a, quote, non-mission related incident today, but did not detail how the soldier's death occurred. We are deeply saddened by this loss, said Major General Tracy Norris, the state's top general. We're focused on supporting the soldier's family and are providing all available resources. In another statement, Texas Governor Greg Abbott's office said Texas Rangers are investigating the incident. Our hearts are heavy at the news of the tragic death of a Texas guardsman stationed, by your order, you idiot, at the border as part of Operation Lone Star, Abbott said in a release. Doesn't that sound tough? The Texas Rangers will conduct a thorough investigation, yada, yada, but okay. We're taking action to ensure such loss of life never happens again. It's happened twice in a month. Currently, troops assigned to Operation Lone Star are in possession of their personal firearms due to Texas's strong firearms rights. All 6 of the deaths associated with the mission have been attributed to personal weapons. Feels like a problem. There have been at least 2 other incidents where troops on the mission have negligently discharged their personal weapons, according to the documents, though neither shooting resulted in injuries, thankfully. A source familiar with operational planning told Army Times that the headquarters overseeing the mission, quote, is working on a policy about personal weapons, though it's not clear what restrictions would be put in place and when. But, Texas and their hard-ass view on guns, and Greg Abbott always tweeting every time there's a shooting like, come on, Texans, go get more guns. There's no backing off from this, and they won't accept, I'm sure, any restrictions against bringing your personal weapons there. Even though, in the Army National Guard, you would think that there's plenty of weapons available to the soldiers as it is. But in the armed forces, they actually control the weapons pretty strictly, and you're not just wandering around with weapons for no reason. They control who's got them, when they get them, and how many magazines of ammunition they're issued, etc., etc. But if you wanted to screw around with it and give a bunch of depressed people with no sense of mission, who are separated from their families, for your greater political glory, a bunch of personal weapons, well, you are going to find lots of accidental discharges and some purposeful discharges, 4 of them killing themselves intentionally, and 2 additional deaths from accidental discharges of personal weapons, which they really shouldn't have. But how do you reconcile Army discipline with cowboy idiocy, political style? And the answer is, in the Texas National Guard, where a cowboy idiot governor can override things, you say, let's let personal weapons float around. Besides, they're all trained, right? They're all military trained. They know what they're doing with weapons. 6 of them are dead, but what the hell? Good way to support the troops. Anyway, lots of good links in this piece back to the previous stories, including the one about the 4 suicides. That was the one that I believe I had stored away for our consideration on the show earlier and was lost in pocket. Wave of suicides hits Texas National Guard's border mission. 4 soldiers have taken their own lives. That was December 23rd. And since then, 2 more have died accidentally. Same author here, Davis Winkie? Yes. Winkie, if you want to look it up. But you can always look in our summary posted over at Daily Coast. Thanks to the perseverance of Scott, who thankfully is on the job and taking care of maybe the most tedious part for me of doing any of this work. So our thanks always to Scott Anderson for his help on these things. And as a matter of fact, it's about time for us to put that drop in his bucket, as it were, and pay him for the month. And by the way, thank you to all of the donors who help support the show. Not only can we hold our head up high and wake up in the morning and do this thing, but we can at least throw a couple of bucks Scott's way for taking care of the toughest job I associate with this thing. At any rate, there you have it. I'll include the second, or the chronologically first and longer article about the wave of suicides hitting Texas National Guard's border mission, looking much deeper at the conditions under which these people are serving and why it's driving them to suicide. A pretty serious thing for which Greg Abbott will pay no price and be held to no account whatsoever, most assuredly. Okay, time for us to check out at this point and hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Not quite time for the music to start here. Also want to acknowledge, maybe we'll throw this in for weird reading over the weekend, our friend Judy Vincent, who sent us this odd piece from the Indian Express. And what a weird story this one is. She sent me the picture that goes along with it. A security guard had nothing to do, so he drew eyes on a painting entitled Three Figures by the abstract artist Anna Leporskaya. This picture on display here, it's very intriguing. It looks to be, at least in the section of the picture photo, or section of the picture that's available in the photo, three figures with blank faces. And I guess bored and walking around with nothing to do, someplace in Russia, I guess. A bored security guard walking around with nothing to do, and I guess I would think maybe with a little OCD, and he couldn't take the idea of seeing these blank, incomplete faces looking at him, so he drew eyes, little round circle eyes in some of the figures here with a ballpoint pen. That's not fair to the artist, of course. The painting, made in the 1930s, it's a classic apparently, and estimated to be insured at about 740,000 pounds sterling, so that's got to be a good $1 million or so. So, painting ruined there, but it looks kind of cute and fun anyway. You should take a look at that. Want other stuff that looks cute and fun but is actually deadly serious and needs to be paid attention to? Well, the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is the next stop here on Netroots Radio. Stay tuned.
From netrootsradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Here's another weird story. A convicted fraudster and self-appointed election auditor was invited by Wisconsin Republicans to represent his personal, colorful, stolen election conspiracy theory to the State Assembly's Elections Committee. Like we've been telling you, these people are hard at work around the country trying to make it possible to steal the next